Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Leveraging Guest Data and Personalization to Transform the Customer Journey, presented by Stay in Touch, Duetto, and Revinate. I'm your host, Frigola, and I'm joined by my presenters today. First up is Quentin Moores, Director of Strategic Alliances for Duetto. Quentin manages business relationships with Duetto's integration partners, as well as looking at emerging technologies and opportunities to work with new partners. Quentin is a 25-plus year industry veteran who has worked in a variety of sales and marketing roles in hospitality technology, including companies in the PMS, CRS, Switch, and digital marketing segments. Joining us from Stay in Touch is Director of Strategic Partnerships, Ryan King. Ryan King is a former hotelier with almost 20 years of experience that has spanned just about every department through the course of his hotel career. He worked at TravelClick, where he spent a good amount of his time consulting with individual properties and large management groups, helping them find technology to improve RevPAR and increase profitability. He now spends his time working with other hospitality tech companies to help strengthen the Stay in Touch ecosystem in order to provide a world-class offering to all the Stay in Touch clients. And rounding out our panel is Erica Rich, Senior Hospitality Marketing Strategist at Revinate. Erica Rich is responsible for maximizing customer success through the education and adoption of hotel email marketing best practices. As the developer and instructor of Revinate's email marketing certification for hoteliers, Erica has traveled around the world educating hoteliers on how to become effective email marketers. She joined Revinate's team in July of 2015 and is based out of the company's headquarters in San Francisco, California. All right, once again, welcome our audience. Thank you for joining us. Just want to run through the webinar agenda.
Okay, great. Thanks.
We'll be discussing today how to use your data to create accurate forecasts and market to guests at the right time, on the right channel, and with the right price. We'll also discuss using data and personalization to customize the guest on-stay experience. And of course, targeting and automated email campaigns you should be sending to stay on top of the mind throughout the customer journey. And before we wrap things up and turn things over to the audience for questions, we'll talk about six key takeaways that our presenters will leave you with. So we'll go ahead and kick things off with the first presenter, Quentin Moores, who's going to discuss using your data to create accurate forecasts and market to guests at the right time, on the right channel, and with the right price. Quentin?
Thanks, Free. Yeah, this is a pretty popular subject right now, and it's the customer journey for Duetto is something that's increasingly becoming a part of our overall revenue strategy, and something that customers are increasingly interested to. So it's great to be talking about this today. So how is data shaping a new customer journey for us? And if you can, there, I think there's a slide before that. Okay, no. Okay, so in today's landscape, from a personalization and a loyalty perspective, 75% of your business today is focusing on solving today's tactical challenges at the property or the group. Probably 20% where you're going, what you're doing with your assets, what are your plans, what are the renovation plans, et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest concern that probably we should be thinking about is the very relatively small 10% or less focus that we spend on what's actually happening day to day. And what does the future of e-commerce look like? Are we prepared and are we thinking about the future? And of course, loyalty segues into this nicely. So from the perspective of loyalty programs and personalization, independent hoteliers, regional chains, etc., are really trying to compete with global loyalty programs in an environment where they really do dominate. However, it's important to remember the difference between personalization and points programs, which provide no true customer recognition. And I always say this anecdotally, other than your login and password, and when and if you check for your points. You know, I have personal experience of this in terms of, if you ask me how many loyalty programs I'm a member of, I probably couldn't remember, but I know I have points here and there. And research has kind of borne that out in terms of 75% of hotel loyalty members belong to 3 or more loyalty programs. I would argue that that's the complete opposite of an airline loyalty landscape, and doesn't indicate much overt loyalty at all, rather than grabbing points when you can get them as a result of a stay. That's more driven by availability and rate, as opposed to a personal experience that gives you what you need. It's also hard to differentiate products in that environment, as all these brands tend to offer the same perks, whether it's free Wi-Fi, parking, loyalty member rates that don't offer that significant of a value. And travelers tend to use these points programs for gaming rooms and freebies. It's not the online booking experience that seems to matter. So there's an opportunity, I think, here kind of to change that perception and begin to compete both with the global chains and the OTAs who are using the data that we can use at the same time if we effectively capture it, and then utilizing booking engines to then convert that personalized content and pricing into more revenue. True loyalty, really, when you think about it, is more like companies like Apple, where you and I are going to spend premium prices for more products. So what can you do as a hotelier in this environment? Well, we're going to talk a bit about it today in the coming slides, but offering specific loyalty rates based on customer value, including non-room revenue spend is a key point, and tracking shopping details of your loyal customers, so that we better understand the behavior through things like regrets and denials. And if you can move to the next slide. So let's talk about what that means for hotel shoppers today, quite honestly. Pretty simply, the booking experience today presents millions of rates, millions of offers in a very confusing manner. And I'll talk anecdotally about something that I've had personal experience with. But all this mess leads to a comparatively low conversion rate of 2% industry-wide for hotel website conversion, compared to about 3 to 4.5% for all other segments. Obviously, there's some deviation by device, with desktop and tablet still dominating. Smartphone increasingly dominates research. But what are the steps we can take as hoteliers to change this fact and take advantage of the data and technology that's in front of us? Next slide, please. The first step is to change. First step in that change, in that evolution, is getting all of your top departments aligned. We tend to think in a very siloed approach, from an operational, from a sales, from a marketing perspective, yet every single one of those factors increasingly is joined at the hip in terms of occupancy, housekeeping, running multi-day promotions over periods that occupancy is full, and understanding how those all tie together. We have to stop looking at hotel sales, marketing, and operations in isolation, and we have to start getting everybody in the loop from that process, whether it's revenue, sales, marketing, operations, even asset managers, owners, and executives. All have differing priority, whether it's working to bottom line profitability or working to forecasting objectives. And this is what Duetto considers a true revenue strategy. We don't just talk about optimizing pricing these days. We talk about the overall culmination of bringing all of those resources together to create a true strategy that ultimately affects revenue and profitability. So once we align these functional areas, where does the data fit in? Next slide, please. So as you can see from this slide, you have the core asset, which is hospitality and service. You also have what the customer wants, but most importantly, you should have all the data. Now the data is there. It's the question is how you're gathering it, how you're capturing it, whether it's hotel data that you're getting from CRS, PMS, whether it's guest data pulled from a CRM, loyalty programs, what you're capturing from search engines, what you're capturing from stays, reputation data, as we know, from social media, ratings, reviews, etc., and the market data, which again is increasingly accessible for customer data capture. There's products and services out there today, CRMs, etc., that can pull this together, but this is where your technology ultimately and the integrations of your partners become critically important. You need all the data ingested by all these different touch points to be centralized, analyzed, and churned out in a way that the right systems at the right time are making the right decisions about rates, about products, and about personalized content. Again, it comes back to the idea of having all the department leaders and the making decisions on the most accurate and real-time data. Again, that example of a multi-day stay promotion when the sales and marketing individuals may not be aligned with a revenue management team in terms of understanding, well, I want to promote on these days. Well, actually, we don't have the availability or the rate to be able to offer on those days, and your promotion becomes valueless. Next slide, please. So what does this data do exactly? Well, the data creates an understanding of guest behavior and the value at funnel conversion. In other words, the booking engine. I mentioned an anecdotal example before that I had, but it was at one point I was going in to talk to a senior vice president of marketing for an extended stay brand, and I thought I'd just look at their website first to go in and see how they were presenting rates today. And on the very first page of the website, not even into the booking engine at this point, it said 10% off all rates or key rates for capturing my loyalty, in other words, my email address. And I thought, okay, great, I'll try this. So I logged in, gave them my email address, and proceeded to go through 2 or 3, 4 more clicks to get to the booking engine. And then I was presented with a list of rates that must have been 50 or 60 rates long, with no indication of how that 10% reduction discount was being applied to those rates. And I perceived that it was probably at checkout, but by that time they'd lost me as a customer. I'm not interested, I'm moving on. So this is kind of one of the kind of challenges that's very typical of booking engines today, and how we present products and how we order them and how we present them to customers, especially in the scope of understanding those customers. In this slide, and this is from a Duetto product called Playmaker, which we are able to insert into the booking engine process, whereby we're able to show a rate with the comparative rates on either side of it grayed out in such a way that the customer can see the comparative rates and can see what kind of value they're getting out of that member rate. The old adage goes, less is more. In this case, you can definitely see that you're getting value for money for a $292 room versus a $492 room. In other words, it doesn't always mean that a discounted rate is going to work the best. Rather, a package or offer that takes into account the personal preferences and the value to your hotel into account in the decisions about what rate and what product to offer. The content and offer are relevant to your guest, and especially in absence of all the other clutter around it, which allows you to optimize the appropriate guest triggers to optimize the right products and the conversion at the right time, which leads to my next slide. In addition, once we ask a guest to log in, because you have two ways of understanding guests. It's a known guest. Again, in this example, somebody who's logged in and we know who they are. Or in the other example before, where we may not know who the guest is, but we may be able to use a third-party data provider to understand that that guest may have booked a room or booked an airline ticket to the city that where a property is located in the last 6 weeks. Therefore, we're able to send out a marketing campaign and then bring them into the website and understand who they are and present a rate in that sort of manner. So in scope of the unknown and known guest, this is where personalized pricing and pricing strategy really comes into its own. Once we ask the guest to log in or provide contact information, we can truly personalize rates, even as we've seen in this case, out of parity with our OTA friends. And this is where the value really starts to become in, because based on the guest profile, and this is something that comes from, obviously, from the gaming industry, which we understand very well, in terms of understanding the customer's full value and their average daily worth, whether they're just simply a business customer who's coming into the hotel, leaving first thing in the morning, coming back late at night and not making any ancillary spend, versus on the far right, we've got Adam, whose daily worth is $240, eats in the restaurant, he uses the facilities, he prints items at the business center, et cetera, et cetera. But the key point here is be able to offer a rate that's relevant to the profile and the spend of that individual, and escaping from the typical strategy of tying everything to a bar rate and providing no differentiation. So once we've asked that guest to log in and we've provided the personal rates, we truly understand the value to both the client and to the hotel offering the products, and aligning those with optimizing the conversion truly brings revenue strategy and data marketing to the optimal endpoint, which is to simply increase conversion and revenue. And with that said, I'll pass back to Free.
Awesome, thank you, Quentin. I did want to follow up here with a question. So is there a way for hotels to actually implement a personalization program that actually is going to make them more money, as opposed to, maybe lowering their ADR?
Yeah, it gets back to, again, in this case, and again, I have to speak from a Duetto perspective, we take a unique approach to pricing, which is referred to as open pricing, whereby we're individually yielding channels, segments, room types, etc., and matching that with the optimizing who the client is. We're able to still optimize the price, but do so in a way where we're understanding what the demand is by channel. And again, it gets back to things like understanding regrets and denials, understanding what the demand is for certain days, forecasting effectively, and then marrying that with the ability to merchandise offers and pricing according to those profiles, either unknown or known from a logged in perspective.
Awesome, thanks, Quentin. All right, we will go to our next presenter, Ryan King, who's going to speak about using data and personalization to customize the guest on-stay experience. Ryan?
Great, thanks, Free. Well, so Quentin has kind of went into is how we capture that guest as they're looking and shopping. But what's really equally important is how are you going to use this data when the guest arrives at the hotel? So modern PMS platforms utilize cloud computing technology. This makes it easier for them to exchange information so that you can offer a more personalized approach to the guest during the welcome and departure. Really, what we want to do is take the information we know about the guest and offer them some instant offers, some upgrades, amenities. This will help us drive a little bit of revenue through that process, but also it's going to give those guests what they want. For years as hoteliers, we've sat there and we've gathered information about our guest preferences, and they have essentially laid dormant in our PMS systems, not really doing anything. And now what we want to do is activate that data to really make a difference. It's possible to use all the knowledge that we know to better understand our guest preferences. If you look at another industry, and I'm going to take retail for just a moment, you talk about them, for over a decade, they've been training consumers to expect a more personalized approach to the shopping experience. So in the hospitality industry, we're just kind of catching up to this. We're starting to use that data we have now in our PMS to create a better experience. And using this becomes especially important the more commoditized that hotel rate shopping becomes. What you really want to do is offer the guests a little more convenience and control over their stay to create a far more loyal experience. And this is going to translate much more than a point system could offer. And honestly, guests that stay in independent hotels, they are expecting more of a personalized approach. And it's important not for us as independent hoteliers just to meet that, it's really to exceed it and to give them that surprise and delight. I want to talk a little bit more about this convenience and control idea for a moment. I think it's important to acknowledge the shift in consumer behavior and really give a special nod to the airline industry who drove this engineering or just ingenuity with self-check-in and pioneering that type of an approach. And now it's really become clear that the modern traveler is a lot more tech savvy, and they are looking for hotels to keep up with their other experiences that they have during the travel journey. So Gartner Research did this study, and there's a lot of stats here on the screen you can see. One of the more important points that I think that I want to highlight on is that 84% of the respondents said that they would take advantage of mobile check-in if the hotel offered it. So what does this mean for us hoteliers? We're so ingrained in being people-oriented people. If we allow the guest to bypass the front desk, won't that make this a colder, more impersonal approach? I think that's the thing that we get asked a lot. And really, what you've got to step back and look at and say, what are the guests doing now? What are they used to? The brands have been allowing their loyal members, whether you're Hilton Honors, Marriott Rewards, you can go through the app and you can do your online check-in now. And it is a little bit of a cold and impersonal approach. It doesn't do a lot. And honestly, I think they're missing the boat in this. What we really need to do is think about, and next slide, Free, what we can do to make that digital check-in a little more personal. So the first part is think about this. Start aligning your check-in message with the same cadence that they would receive their online message from the airline. So I don't know how many of you have gotten a recent check-in experience, but I did American Airlines last week. I got a little message that said, time to check in, and it was about 24 hours prior to my flight. Then I got another message in the morning that said, hey, you still haven't checked in. And it was a nice reminder to me. And, I love that I can do all of this, but they're also recognizing me. So think about this other piece. The next component is you have a lot of data in your harvest. Make sure that you're using the guest name and make sure the message and the tone in your welcome message reflects that of your brand voice. So tailor your message based on your property. A luxury, more formal hotel, you're going to use formal language in that, and they're going to feel like it's an extension of your hotel. If you're more hip and trendy, try to use a little more of a language that's got a hip vibe to it. We want the guests to feel that they're already getting the experience of what it's going to be like walking through the doors of the desk. Now, the next thing we want to do is make sure that this digital check-in is equally pleasant as a highly attentive staff check-in. So ask questions. Ask things in your welcome message that, hey, when are you going to be arriving? This allows the guest to interact and say, oh, this is when I'm coming in. It also allows the service departments to know when is this person going to arrive. Ask them if they have any special needs. I am a frequent traveler that I don't like feather pillows, yet every guest has them. Every hotel rather has them. So I put in my thing, no feather pillows. So I'd love to somebody ask me, is there anything else? And I'm like, yes, no feather pillows. Make sure they're out of my room. I don't want feather pillows. The other thing is as we're asking these things, we should offer them some options here. I talked about convenience and control. Well, we're giving them convenience to go through this. Give them control about a few other things. So how about asking, hey, do you want to check in early? Wouldn't you feel awesome if you were checking in on your phone and as you're doing it, the hotel said, do you want to check in early? And you were able to sit there and say, yes, I know my plane's going to land at 10:30. Hotel's a half an hour from the airport. I'm going to be there at 11 a.m. Be great if I could confirm that, and I would feel so confident. I could get to my room, I could drop my stuff off, I can take a quick shower, and I can get off to my meeting. Like I'd feel really good about this whole thing. And during this process, of course, we're tailoring these experiences and giving that guest a really rich experience. The next thing is we're going to drive some revenue with this. So as we're looking at the room type and the rate that this guest had paid, why don't we offer them a chance to say, hey, you know what, you're here 3 days, do you want to upgrade to a corner room for $25? I'm like, yeah, actually that'd be really nice. Yeah, I can do that, no problem. This is something, once again, you go back to that airline mentality. They've made a fortune on ancillary revenues for this, and they've made me a happier person because I can sit there and say, yeah, I got shoved into that middle seat because I booked last minute, but oh, I can get that front row aisle seat, done, $40, I've spent it, I'm good. So think of these things as you're going through it. This is going to give that really personal impression to the guest as you're interacting with them. And think about common add-ons and things that people might like, and offer those as an amenity. If they're coming in late and you say, would you like us to drop a bucket of beers and some chips in your room? Yes. Excellent. So finally, during this process, close the loop. Make sure it's clear to them how to pick up a key when the room is ready. So just before they're arriving, send out another message to let them know the room is ready and how to collect that key. If you're doing an express check-in area and you have a spot in the lobby that they can come up, let's say the kiosk, and they can pick up the key from there, make sure that's clearly shown in the lobby area. Make sure a guest knows that that's going to be there for them, so let them know in that message. Better yet, for those really tech-savvy travelers, offer the digital key option so that they can just utilize their phone. It's equally important to do this on the flip side. So think about, now I'm getting ready to depart, send that message out in the morning to the guest, let them know that they have the option to check out. Do the same thing as before, ask them questions. Would you like to check out later? Let them review their bill. Make sure that whole tone and the voice is everything's there, and then email them a copy of the folio after they're done to the checkout. This will just help cement that whole personalized experience. This is a really hard thing, I think, for some hoteliers I've spoken to, but as they see it in action, they get the feeling of how personal this can be if you do it right. Finally, think about how this is going to affect your guest's impression of you. We have guests that we know that are shouting out, that are using our Stay in Touch platform. They're actually getting people doing shout outs on TripAdvisor about how nice it is to be able to check in via email or to be able to get the automated checkout. So people are talking about this. This is an important concept to the traveler. They're very interested in being able to have these type of options. And it goes back to that whole goodwill thing. If you give the option to the traveler to do this, you're going to get a lot more goodwill from them. And utilizing the data that you have to make this a much more personal experience is going to truly drive home that loyalty that brings them back again and again.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So one question here. So it seems like it would be maybe difficult or maybe a headache for a front desk if they confirm an early check-in just the day before. So how can they actually keep track of that and streamline that process?
Yeah, what a great question for you. That comes up a lot. You do have to have a plan in order to execute this. The technology can help you a lot with this. Early check-in guests come into a queue. They can also then be set up for the system to automatically grab a certain room type when it's clean and inspected, to take that room and make sure nobody else at the front desk uses it or checks somebody in. So you do have to think about this whole process and use the technology tools to make sure you're delivering on it. Last thing you want to do is not have a plan to execute this, have a guest show up and you don't have their room ready. So this is a great question. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, so we are going to move forward with our next and final presenter for this webinar. It is Erica Rich from Revinate. She's going to be speaking about targeted and automated email campaigns you should be sending to stay top of mind throughout the customer journey. Erica?
Great, thanks so much, Free, and good morning and afternoon, everybody. You know, really, I just want to reiterate what Quentin noted earlier in the presentation, and just how much personalization influences loyalty. We've been spending a lot of time here really focusing our research and our content around this shift in loyalty to personalization. Points programs are really sort of by way of the past, especially when you're talking about, you know, independent, mid-sized, smaller groups. We found that those big points programs only work when you have a minimum of 30,000 rooms in your portfolio, which I know most of us out there do not. So how do you compete with the Marriotts and the big boys of the world, right? And that really is personalization, and that is why we're all so passionate about this topic. And the good news is, because data is so much more easily accessible because of great partners like Stay in Touch and Duetto, and of course Revinate, it's easier than ever. And I certainly know from a hotelier's perspective, sometimes the idea of leveraging guest data can feel very intimidating. But the opposite is true nowadays, which is really, really exciting. So, you know, we went over the booking process and then the check-in process and how we can make all of that feel very dynamic and very, very personal. And now I want to talk about how you can actually stay top of mind throughout the entire journey, from the point of inspiration to pre-arrival, check-in, all the way to post-stay, and of course, inspiration once again. There's no reason anymore why you should just be blasting your entire database when it's so easy to actually send customized, personalized communications to your database. And that is now the new expectation. Any one of us can go into our inbox and immediately find some really interesting campaigns that really felt like were sent just to us, maybe from our favorite retailer or restaurant or whoever the case may be. And the ones that feel very generic, well, those are the ones we're probably going to ignore, delete, unsubscribe from, mark as spam. So I think in the hotel industry, we're so uniquely positioned to be sending out these very customized, personalized campaigns because we actually know a lot about our guests. Next slide, please. So it all starts with the guest data, right? And every hotel, as we've all mentioned already, is sitting on a gold mine of data. What you're looking at here is really what PMS data looks like when it becomes visualized. And one thing that we like to do with our customers is provide database insights, where you can actually see how healthy is your database. How good of a job are you doing in collecting email addresses, city, state, preferences, so on and so forth? Because when you start collecting all of that data in the reservation process, that's when you really start to build a very rich profile on your guest. And you can start drilling deeper and deeper into that data. So this right here will show you, okay, well, exactly who are those guests who are booking my web direct rates? That's a very lucrative guest. They're spending, they're not going through the OTAs, they're actually booking directly. What do I know about them, and how can I start targeting them a little bit more specifically? Next slide. So with that, you start to know a lot about the individual person. For example, right here we have Jessica, and through different interactions, we know her birthday. We know she likes to travel with her family. We understand that she's a repeat guest. We have her survey response, so we know that she enjoys her stay. Oh man, but for some reason she keeps booking through the OTA. So what are we going to do about that? And with all these different data points, we can start putting her in different segments and sending specific campaigns based on that segment. Sometimes it's going to be a segment of one. If we start setting up automated birthday campaigns, Well, that campaign is going to go out just to Jessica maybe 2 weeks before her birthday to give her enough time to plan her birthday stay. Maybe it's 30 days. However, because we knew that she once booked a family-friendly package through the rate code, we're going to start sending her some spring break offers or some summer vacation offers, or maybe a new partnership you're doing with the museum down the street. We want to make sure that Jessica knows about those types of offers because she knows that, because we know that she travels with her family. Now, if we didn't have that information and we're sending Jessica information on family-friendly offers and she has no kids, well, that's not really going to build a relationship that we're looking for. Next slide. So the one thing that we know is that this idea of personalization and segmentation, it works. It really works. When we analyzed our own customer data, we saw that those customers who were actually segmenting their database and sending these more personalized campaigns were able to achieve a 20% higher open rate, a 70% higher click-through rate, and most importantly, they drove a 73% higher revenue rate per recipient. So they're actually driving more revenue by sending to a smaller group, but to a targeted group, than just blasting their entire database. And that is really important. If we can go to the next slide. So I know as a hotelier how busy everybody is, and it could feel overwhelming to start thinking about what do I send, who do I send it to, when do I send it. That could feel exhausting, but it doesn't have to be, not with the right support and the right tools. I like to break it down just by those different stages. If you start there and you think about the customer journey and how you want to interact with your guest during these different stages, you really start to build a communications strategy that makes a lot of sense and that's thoughtful. So I talked about the inspiration. Well, that's where you can actually set up quite a bit of automated campaigns. Who doesn't love to have work going on in the background that you only have to focus on once and then it just does your job for you? That's what these automated campaigns do, like a We Miss You campaign. To anybody who hasn't been on property in maybe 6 months or a year, just trying to get in front of them and offering them a really smoking deal. Birthday, we already talked about, get in front of them in front of a birthday booking anniversary. All of these things are little triggers, but they're also sent at a very strategic time to get them to book at the right time. But of course, other inspirational ideas, those are the ones you're probably a little bit more familiar with, like a holiday campaign. I mean, we're probably all very busy working on our Black Friday offers, right? Maybe our New Year's Eve party's coming up. We got to start promoting that. These are the types of campaigns you want to be sending out, but think about who should get them. If we're talking about a Black Friday offer, should we be sending those who booked last year's Black Friday offer with maybe early access to the sale? Or how about those guests who have stayed with you more than 3 times? Perhaps because of their loyalty, you want to reward them with early access to your Black Friday sale. But let them know. The one thing that I find so interesting is that people will take the time to personalize their campaigns or segment them in a way that's really, really insightful, but then they'll never tell the guest why they're receiving that offer. Let that person know, because you are truly a valued guest of this property. We are offering you 48-hour early access to our Black Friday sale, so you're going to get a better rate and a better room than anybody else. That is how you create loyalty. Moving on to that pre-arrival stage, this is where you have your most engaged guest. They're excited, right? They booked the reservation, and of course, it goes without saying they get an email during that point too with their confirmation. But they made their reservation. They're looking forward to check-in. They're excited for their stay, and they actually want more information. So here's your opportunity to upsell them on what you have going on property. Tell them about your restaurant. Tell them about any events or activities that might be going on during their stay. Give them the opportunity to actually upgrade their room, right? That's the time to do it. On property, is an extraordinary time to reach out to your guests. And this is actually a really great time to help with your email capture. So one thing that you can do is actually send an email the moment they check in, which is triggered by the PMS filter. So when they check in, go ahead, ask for their email address and say, if you give me your email address right now, I'm actually going to send you an offer for our spa, or I'm going to send you an offer for our drink, or you know what, if you're not that busy that day, maybe you send them an offer for an upsell, and they can actually upgrade their room just by giving you their email address. And there you go. If it's an OTA guest or maybe someone you have an email address for in the past, you're now able to collect that really, really important data from them. And then, of course, you have your post day. And once again, we can automate a lot of these different types of emails. I love the idea of that OTA win back. You've captured their email address. Send them an email that explains to them the value of booking direct. Come back and visit us and receive 20% off your stay plus these 3 amenities that are totally not available if you book through booking.com, right? Also a great opportunity to send your surveys, maybe a thank you note from the general manager, but to really close that loop and to remind them how valued they are to you as a guest. When you put all these communications together in a way that feels on brand, that feels personal, that is the way that you create loyalty, and the guest feels like you actually understand what's relevant to them, what's valuable to them. Let's just go to the next slide. I just wanted to show you an example of a customer who does this really well. This is the Garland in Beverly Hills. You can see, they have their pre-arrival set up where they're selling some other amenities they have on property. They have an OTA win back. Just the idea of saying a special offer just for you. It doesn't even have to say their name. The word you makes it feel very personal. But thank you for choosing the Garland. Come back and get this special deal. They sent another email with literally I think the subject line was just thank you. And this went to guests who stayed more than three times. And they got a really, really special offer because of that. And of course, the we miss you. Dear Tara, we miss you. So Tara really understands just why she's getting this offer. It's because she hasn't been on property for a while. Let's get her to come back. And the next slide. So we recently released a benchmark report on email marketing just to show how different hotels are faring against other hotels in their region or across the globe. And the results are always really interesting to us. But as you can see, those pre-arrival emails, they get opened. So if you don't know where to start with your email marketing campaign strategy, start with the pre-arrival. That engagement is extraordinary. As you can see, a 62% open rate and a 21% click-through rate. Even more interesting, when you actually include a upsell opportunity, those emails get opened more. So if you're not doing upsells in your pre-arrivals, you're leaving money on the table and you're depriving your guests of the opportunity to enhance their stay. It's a win-win across the board. You can also see some other open rates from welcome to OTA win back, we miss you. And if you haven't had a chance to look at our benchmark report, you're welcome to contact me and I can get that out for you, no problem. Some really interesting stats that will help you compare yourself against some other hotels. All right, last slide, please. I did want to use the opportunity to make a pretty exciting announcement. So we are partnering with Duetto. So if there are any Duetto Revinate customers on the line, really excited to say that soon we'll be offering dynamic pricing on those upsells. So instead of having to manually set your rates, we'll be able to grab those rates from Duetto. They'll be yielded based on demand, based on availability, and you can actually make sure that you're maximizing your amount of revenue that you're getting from those upsells. So we're super excited for this partnership. Again, if you need more information on that, feel free to reach out to your customer success manager. And that is all I have. Nope. Did I lose somebody?
Hi, so I do want to move along pretty quickly here because we're running behind a little bit. So I want to give our presenters the opportunity to give their takeaways, their last takeaways, and then we'll turn things over to the audience. So if you have any questions to the audience, you guys can go ahead and send in those questions to the chat box, and then we'll present those to the presenters. Quentin?
Sorry, the old mute problem. Yeah, I think just the basic, and sorry, I've got a bit of echo going on somebody's phone. My basic takeaway or offer is that pretty simply, the traditional view of loyalty programs and the way that we manage those programs in terms of rate and occupancy is typically being on discounting, and those rules don't have to apply anymore. If you can combine the concept of open pricing, and you can provide the data to allow you to recognize certain guests, obviously known guests, and even recognize the signature, the digital signature of unknown guests, and be able to offer the correct promotion, then you can kind of negate those problems associated with just discounting to loyalty. And you can also create loyalty by creating an experience that says, I recognize you, I know what you're worth. So I think we're at a unique juncture to be able to do that. It seems that there's more tools and more power, whether it's CRMs, whether it's revenue strategy platforms, whether it's booking engines, that are all poised at this stage to take advantage of something that we've kind of just let the OTAs and let the global brands dominate for honestly too long. And I think we're now is the time, and the next sort of 12 to 24 months are going to see a lot of change. Certainly from our world, we expect that. We're starting to deploy products like Game Changer today that address this, and as our friends at Revinate have indicated, it's combining all of these areas of functionality into one strategy. So hopefully that kind of sums it all up. So thanks everybody for giving us time to talk.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of echo about the importance of utilizing the data that you have in your P&S. You really need to harness it to deliver actionable experiences. We're all in a very competitive marketplace. Use technology that's going to help you truly understand who your guests are and better customize an experience with them. And remember, customers and guests nowadays are really going to be looking for more convenience and control. This is going to be kind of a central part of the service component and how they judge and how they create that experience with you. So think about how you're going to meet those expectations, and certainly look at all of the data available to you in order to make a more personalized service experience while they're on property.
Erica?
Yeah, and just to wrap things up, there's no other tool out there that you have in your arsenal like email marketing to transform the customer journey. It's really the only way that you can connect with your guests during pretty much every stage, and that's powerful. Email is going to help you stay top of mind, build out loyalty, strengthen guest relationships, and of course, when that's all done right, you're going to drive more profitable revenue. And that personalization can only happen when you have access to your guest data in an easy and frictionless way, and a way that's made actionable. So it's really important that you do work with the right technology partners who understand your needs, your challenges, and obviously how busy you are to be able to figure this out, and are able to serve you your data in a way that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you again to our presenters. So we do have some audience questions here, and if we're not able to get to all of them, we will follow up, of course, with a follow-up email and addressing those questions. So first, I do want to address this one to Quentin. So points, programs, or guest experience, what's more important from Duetto's perspective?
Guest experience, I think, and if you include guest experience with being offered the right rate or the right added value, because something, the other part of this is understanding the guest will give you the opportunity to differentiate on strategy. And what I mean by strategy is I may have a segment of let's take unknown customers. Let's take everybody who's traveled to New York in the last 6 weeks on a business class ticket. I may be able to offer half of those guests an upgrade and half of those guests a discount or a product that is discounted or packaged, and then utilizing sort of A/B testing, be able to understand what the conversion is like. So my argument, not my argument, my answer is, again, rate, but understanding who we're talking to and then how to offer the appropriate product.
Okay, awesome. This one's for you, Ryan. If I allow the guest to check in on their phone, how do I check their ID? I'm concerned about letting someone walk into the hotel that the front desk has not spoken to.
Yeah, great question. So that comes up all the time. I mean, it's one of those things where you want to make sure that the guest that's coming in is somebody that you know, and that there's not going to be a wild party or there's not going to be anything that gets happened. A lot of what can happen now is with digital scannings, they can actually scan their ID in, which gets uploaded to the stay card so that you can have that ID matched to who the guest is. That helps to kind of keep things a little more on the up and up. This is especially important in our more key cities like Miami Beach, New York City, LA, where they're concerned about people coming in and having parties or something like that.
Awesome. So Erica, can you answer this question? How do you address the masked emails you receive from OTAs? How do you personalize for first-time guests?
How do you personalize first-time guests? Do you mean like the OTA win-back?
Yes.
Yeah, so the good news is about Booking.com is that the Booking.com email address is actually valid for 30 days post-checkout. So if you didn't do my little trick and you weren't able to capture the personal email address, you can actually still communicate with that guest via their Booking.com email address for 30 days post-checkout. And that's why we highly recommend that when you do set up your OTA win-back offer, that you have it go out within those 30 days. Even better is about 7 days if you want maximum engagement and conversion. And again, the best way to do that is make them understand the value of booking direct. The worst thing you want to see is a repeat guest come through another booking channel. So that's why email and setting this up is so important, because you want them to come back directly, of course.
Okay, and so a follow-up question here. How do you set up an automatic arrival letter from Revinate once the guest is checked in?
Sure, an automatic arrival letter. So that's something that is triggered just by setting up how far in advance of check-in you want this pre-arrival to go out. So you can set it up, maybe if you are a resort very, very far away and it takes a little bit more planning, you want it to go out 14 days before check-in. So as long as your email service provider, CRM, is integrated with your PMS, you are able to feed that information into the platform and set up those automated emails that can be triggered based off of pretty much any field available in the PMS, including check-in date, check-out date. So any of your email marketing campaigns that are automated based on the customer journey, they're all going to be set up based pretty much on how far in advance check-in or how many days post-checkout, or even a trigger that says guest status has changed to in-house. That's going to kick off the on-property welcome email. So that's all done through integration with your PMS.
Okay, so Quentin, you can answer this question. What are the possible ways to measure the financial performance of a hotel that is adapting an open pricing strategy?
Bottom line revenue is obviously one of the ways, but obviously RevPAR index, in terms of how you can compare not only RevPAR from at your property level, but comparing it to your competitors. There's a lot of obviously tools out there, STR, people like that will show you that. We typically on open pricing, we like we've seen over a period of time, and again, it varies by years, and but on average, an annual growth of in the range of 5 to 7% RevPAR index growth. So that's probably the most logical way of looking at it.
All right, we got a question here about will you ever partner with Stay in Touch? I'm not sure if they're addressing that to Duetto or Revinate, but
We already are.
yeah. Yeah, so we're actually we're integrating with both Revinate and Duetto, and we can obviously send over more information about that, or if you guys want to address that here.
I mean, I would just add, Free, that the way that we've set up the cloud PMS is that with our partners Duetto and Revinate, it's equally important that they're able to harvest this information. So with all of our partners, I think that's a really key thing. In order to have actionable data, you have to be able to have the partners be able to plug in and grab that data out. So we make sure to be able to do that with all of the partners out there.
Awesome.
And I have to say, from Revinate's perspective, Stay in Touch is such a phenomenal partner of ours, and the integration between the two platforms is really seamless, especially because of that cloud integration. So it works beautifully.
Awesome. All right, so we'll wrap things up with one more question that I will address to you, Erica. So what are the most common types of traveler preferences, i.e. family-friendly, upon which our campaigns, promotions can build context-wise? Are these based only in our guest profiles, or should we research and build promotions based on certain personas?
That's a fantastic question. I love that question. So there are some things that we already know about your guest just from having partners like Stay in Touch and being able to bring in that rich PMS data. So I love regional campaigns. If you are a property and and you can actually see this through your database insights functionality, that spring your main markets are New York and London, you should be sending email campaigns specifically to those regions, trying to get them to book for that season, for that offer. So geography is a great one. Loyalty, another good one. Reward those guests who have stayed with you maybe more than 10 nights or more than 3 stays. You can actually look across an entire portfolio if you're talking about, your brand loyalty. You can do that. If you want to get even more personal, you can actually set up preferences through your pre-arrivals where they take a quick little survey and you find out a little bit more about them. And I'm not talking about pillow versus newspaper. I'm talking about, are you interested in culinary? Are you interested in events and attractions? Are you interested in spa? And then you can start targeting different groups that way based on what they told you they actually want to hear about.
Awesome. All right, I think that wraps things up for us. Again, I want to thank our audience for sticking with us the whole way through, and I want to thank our panelists for giving their insights. Once again, thank you guys, and if you have any additional comments or questions, feel free to send that over to info@stayintouch.com, and the webinar recording and presentation will be available within 24 hours, so look out for those emails. Thank you guys again. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Free.
Bye.
Yeah, we're able to get